when we're just carried along, aren't we, really? Sometimes I think we make these huge big choices about what we do and what we don't do, and I don't know if that's really how it happens. It just happens. One moment rolls into another moment, and now that's gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what have we got on the agenda today then?
Well, I thought it would be really nice. I'd love to talk a little bit about habits and addictions. So, as I know you know, Dougie, that I spent the last 3 years working full-time at a treatment centre locally here. We used to be in Javier, then we were in Moraira. And so I thought that I knew a lot about habits and addictions before, and then I've learned so much more in the last 3 years working full on with people who are at the height of their addiction. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what I see the difference between a habit and an addiction. And of course we've got healthy habits and unhealthy habits, if we're going to give them titles, and that's all of us. So I think when we're talking about habits or addictions, I think people's first sort of protocol goes to things like substances and behaviours. So alcohol or drugs or, gambling or whatever it might be. And but we have lots of addictions that are behavioural. So a lot of people are also, what I see, addicted to fear, addicted to worry, addicted to their own stories, addicted to the past, addicted to themselves, and so we, it's really that different. So what is, for me, what is the difference between a habit? Is something that, for me, it's almost like my brain gets into these sort of habitual kind of patterns, and it's kind of running from that place. And so sometimes it feels like we have to kind of retrain the brain, and the brain will just do what it thinks is the right thing for you. It's always kind of working in a survival mode for us. That's how I understand it. But, maybe many moons ago, and often could be something, from when we were younger or a teenager, that, we've had to act in a certain way because that was the best thing that was available for us at that time. So maybe if we were in very sort of vulnerable positions, I hear huge stories, really big stories of some things that really touch my heart and things that you're like, wow, you can't even believe that's true, But I know it, I know that most of them are, and so people have had all sorts of circumstances and things to deal with, and they've dealt with them at the time in the best way that they can. And so I think what I see sort of happens is that sometimes our brain kind of thinks, right, okay, well, that's the way to deal with every sort of circumstance that's like that, or every incident that's like that. And hence why we form these kind of habits of thinking. And so, what might have been helpful for me, something that happened, I don't know, as a teenager, might not serve me if that's the way I'm dealing with it going forward as an adult. So it might have been the right thing to do in that moment, in that incident, because that was the best thing available. So I see how we fall into these kind of habitual patterns, and I see how thinking falls into patterns, and sometimes it's like by understanding, which is why I love what the Serendipity Experience program does, is introduces people to understand how their thinking and feeling system works. So then we can kind of detach, we kind of detach a little bit. We get a chance to be an observer of our own thinking and of our own patterns. So we reflect a little bit. And then we get to see, right, well, if we're observing our thinking, then we cannot be our thinking. Or who's the observer? So what it means is that we are more than just what we think. Right? So our behavior comes from our thinking. I see that very, very clearly. But who we truly are behind our thinking, so that means behind our habits and behind our addictions, who we truly are is not the addiction, is not the unhealthy habit. Who we truly are is all that good stuff that we talked about the last few weeks, the raw materials of being human, our innate qualities, which are love and resilience and well-being and wisdom and compassion and clarity and all of those things. And all these layers and layers and layers of thinking have come on top of that. And then in the end, we kind of, because that has become such a habit for us, it's, we start to believe that's who we are. But we are whoever we think we are. And I am to somebody else whoever they think I am. That doesn't mean that's who I am at my true essence. And that's very easy for us to fall into that. I see how I do that do that all the time like any other human being. But seeing beyond that, that's what was very helpful for me when I worked in the recovery centre, was as people came in or we did interventions or that kind of stuff, I could see that behind their behaviour, which sometimes wasn't very attractive, wasn't very pretty, they'd really burnt their bridges, everybody had kind of had enough. They'd got to the place where, they knew they couldn't do this anymore. But behind that was a beautiful being who was not broken, who was not damaged goods. And so, when we can see that in other people, that's a great place. That's a great starting place for them to eventually start seeing that for themselves. And as they understand, for me, that's how it sort of worked, the work that I did in the treatment centre. As people started to understand how the system works, how our psychological system works, so we talk about all that stuff, the stories start to fall away. And when everything falls away, we're left with kind of what is, what's always there. What's always there, what's a constant. And that constant is the good stuff. So it's like I used to see good people with bad behaviour. Doesn't mean I condone bad behaviour. But I see good people with bad behaviour. They've got caught up in habits. So that's a beautiful thing to witness that, Dougie, when people have come into treatment because they have got caught up in something which might have started from them innocently, not even realising it, like trying to chase a good feeling, right? Because that's what we do. That's often why people reach out for substances like alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs, sex, gambling, that kind of stuff, chasing a feeling of excitement, a feeling of getting rid of the uncomfortable feelings that seem to be churning around in our gut or in our stomach, and those things have worked temporarily. Those things appear to shift the uncomfortable feeling because but we know that they don't sustain. So what happens is, for example, say somebody who is, taking drugs in order to get rid of the uncomfortableness and feel either blank out their own thinking, really often is what it is. That might work for a while, but then it won't, because it's not really true what's happening. Our feelings are coming from thought in the moment. Our feelings are coming from what's going through our, through our thinking system in that moment. So when we take mind-altering substances, of course it plays around with that. But the moment that mind-altering substance wears off, boom, it's like we're back down again. Then we're chasing something else, So there's this chasing always of a feeling. So yeah, we'll explore a bit more about that.
Perfect. We've got to take a little break here.
Lovely.
And we've got our track of the bay today coming up in a moment, which is new from James Blunt, actually. He's got together with Ward Thomas. And if you've ever seen James Blunt on Twitter, if you're a fan of Twitter, if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow James Blunt because he is hilarious. I mean, people knock him for some of his slightly... heartfelt songs, should we say? And he's got an answer for everything. If you follow Twitter, follow James Blunt because this guy is absolutely genius. Right then, our track of the way today, James Blunt, Halfway. It's on the way next. Again, a little later with Cal. Okay, it's Wellness Wednesday because, it's Wednesday. What else are you going to do on a Wednesday? I'm here with Amanda O'Shea. Hiya.
Hello again.
So where were we?
Where were we before? That was a nice song.
Do you like that?
Yeah, I did
It's
like
not
that.
bad. It's all right. James Blunt, it's typical James Blunt with Ward Thomas on this one. But as I said, he is funny on Twitter. If you ever get a chance to see him on Twitter, he's hilarious.
Twitter's something I didn't really get into because there's so many things, aren't there? I mean, my age group's still using Facebook. trying to get to know Instagram.
Oh yeah, you got to be on Insta. You got to be on Insta.
Yeah. So you might be a bit more. But talking about habits and addictions. I mean, social media is one of the big things that we talk about when we talk about with the children. You know, I mentioned the iHeart program that's just been introduced into Spain by myself and a few other lovely ladies who have just done the training that live locally. Actually, we haven't got any. We need some male iHeart facilitators. That would be, I think it's so important when you're working with the children. You got a mixture of sort of females and males. But yes, that would be great if anybody's interested in learning more about this stuff and getting trained up to help sort of spread this message with the teenagers. But social media is one of the big things that we talk about because it's huge and it seems to be what's behind a lot of the, you hear a lot of about bullying and people that are suicidal and all sorts of problems that we've got. But I love that one of the topics that we use is using social media without it using you. That's nice. And we do just sort of get to see that, even if it feels like, I mean, people love to have comments written on their posts or their little likes or love signs or whatever it is. And that, seeing myself even how often I check something or I did a post or just seeing, did anybody read it or did anybody, and noticing it's like, oh, wow. I remember when I used to think that little feeling I got of, got all those likes, whatever used to come from that post, and it's just not true. It's just not how it works. Nothing from the outside has that power to put a feeling inside of us. But it feels like that. It feels like likes and thumbs ups and everything that they do. And it's so nice now, I think, when you can just write something or do a post or put something out there, because it just feels like there's some value in sharing it for somebody else, or you just feel inspired to do it. Or like with your music, or like if you create some music or you create a piece because it just came from the heart and you want to share it. But doing anything because we think that might please other people, or that I think we're very easy. I see how we get caught up in those sort of habits of people pleasing or trying to be popular innocently, really, really innocently. So pinning back to this understanding that what is constant about every single human being. I love that. We just had a comment in, Dougie. I'd love to, can we read that out?
Hang on, let me just get it here.
It's really nice when people write in, and so thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's from Ellie. This is from Ellie. I think Ellie's in Javier or Bonita Chel, somewhere like that.
Okay.
And she says, I agree with this lady this morning saying we are who we are. I had a friend say, I've known you for 26 years, but I don't know you. And thought that's because some days I don't know me. And we change our life and minds change,
Yeah.
And we don't always know ourselves.
Yeah. And I think that I would hear that comment quite a lot. Thanks, Ellie, for that. I think that, I do hear that a lot. People sort of say, especially if I'm dealing with people who are going through what I'd call sort of addiction issues, I'm lost, I don't know who I am anymore. They'd be very, very common sort of statements. And so it's a great question. Who are we? Who are we? So I like to talk about the constants of who and what we are all the time that doesn't change. And they are those things that we talked about, those things that are inside us that we are born with. Our fundamental qualities of being human. And we've got this gift of this amazing human body, whether we might love our particular one or not. It's just amazing the way it functions. The whole system is amazing. Every system within the human body is mind-blowing. And our psychological system is no different to the other systems. There is a logic behind it. It is the way that the way that it works. So, and we get this chance to create and we get to bring these sort of thoughts that pop into our head alive. And that is who we are, really, is just we're part of this system that brings thinkings into feelings, into behaviour. And so because that is constant and that is always changing, and because my own belief systems change, because they're not fixed either, because my truth changes, because, for me there are universal truths, but I'm talking about our own personal truths, because they change constantly. It's like we're never a thing. We are never a label. We're never one thing that never changes. We are constantly in flux, because who we are in the moment is just a reflection of thought in the moment. I can only give you what I've got inside of me in that moment. So if my heart is full of love, and I've got these great. What tends to happen when my heart is full of love is I've got great creative ideas. They're full of kindness and compassion and empathy. It goes hand in hand. So that's what you're going to get. That's behaviour you're going to get from me in the moment. When something has got in the way of that, when I've got caught up in some sort of, I don't know, fearful thinking, or my level of consciousness has kind of taken a drop, then the kind of thinking that's available to me then is probably not as pretty. So it makes sense to me why sometimes we act out, why sometimes we act in that way, that coming more from that sort of place of anxiety or stress or anger or frustration or it's fear. It's all fear-based. I see things as kind of love-based or fear-based. So that's what I see. We talked last week about sort of our consciousness, personal levels of consciousness, and when we're at our true essence, which for me is kind of at a high level of consciousness, when we're in our true self, that's what we are deep inside. We're all that good stuff that just shines out. But the human experience is about seeing all of it. So I don't think the aim of the game is to stay happy and free all the time. I don't think that's what anyone's pointing to. We're just saying that that's what happens when we've got not too much thinking on our mind, when we remember how life works, when we understand how life works. But when we don't, or when we've slipped out of that, then we're in what I would call we're out of the logic, and we're more in, and what's available to us there is overthinking, stuck. We get stuck in our thinking. We're very insecure. So I see that behaviours come out of insecurity, and the sort of behaviours that have led to what I would call addictive substances or behaviour come from a place of insecurity, and we reach out trying to make ourselves feel better. Now that's clever to do that. If I don't feel good and it feels really uncomfortable and I don't like it, it makes sense to try and do something to make myself feel better. But because that's not the truth of how it works, I'll end up, we talked a bit a little earlier before that little break there about chasing a feeling. So I see that we get caught up in chasing a feeling, whether that's on social media, whether that's, down the pub, whether that's whatever it is that we do, even in healthy habits. So, going to the gym and going to yoga and doing meditation, all that stuff, which is healthy. But it isn't the truth. It isn't the truth that we're okay and we're enlightened and all that stuff because we go to meditation and we go to yoga, for example. That's great. And I'm not saying that that's not helpful stuff to do. I do all that stuff. But I do it these days because I like doing it. I don't do it because I need to do that to be okay. So there's a lot of people that sit in yoga classes or whatever, that have got very busy minds. And there are lots of people that have never been to a yoga class or practice sort of meditation as we share it today, who are living very fulfilled, happy lives with peace of mind. But these are just things that have helped some people, and that's what we do. Something helps us, we share it, right? We share it. And if you've read a book and you've loved it, it makes sense for you to say to someone, oh, you got to read this book, or oh, let me gift you this book, because it feels like, wow, if they could get a tiny bit of what I just got from that book, I could see that could be super helpful for them. And they could read that book and not like it, or it goes over their head, or they hear something completely different. So in a way, it's never the book, it's never the film, it's never the practice, it's never the strategy. It's what, what clicks for us, what insight, and that means it comes from inside of us. And insight, we have fresh thinking about something in the moment that is we're able to hear it when maybe before we were never able to hear it. So it doesn't mean it's not there. I have people who, might have a kind of great breakthrough. They've been stuck in a certain sort of habitual thought pattern for years, and they have that they're like, oh my goodness, that's not true. Why have I been telling myself for years that for example, somebody sort of saying, life's unfair and life's awful and life's, that kind of chat, that sort of victim, when we get caught up and we're sort of a victim to life. And suddenly they realise, oh no, that's not true. But I've told myself for that so many times, I began to believe it, and then they're like, wow, why would I say that? Now, having that insight can come anywhere. It doesn't happen in the class or in the session often, or during that meditation practice or in that hike up the mountain. It can just happen when you're, in the shower or hanging your washing up or stuck in the dishwasher, or when you're not trying. But what we do in all these other things that I see, we're just sowing seeds. We're just sowing seeds, and we don't know where that that kind of gets picked up with our own consciousness. And we start to put jigsaw pieces together. And suddenly it's like, oh, ka-ching. It's like it comes together. Things tend to fall in place. And so that's, when people are hearing these little snippets, because that's what it is really. If I work with somebody, Dougie, on a one-to-one, I work with people for 3 months or 9 months often. And just because, I don't know, that seems to, the program that I've designed has really has come from all my experience of working with people. And sometimes people can hear something that's super helpful to keep in the conversation for longer. But what we're doing in things like this on the radio is just giving little snippets for people to get curious. It's an invitation to get curious. If you're liking something that you hear, then please go and just have a little look at my website, have a little look at my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Amanda O'Shea. The website's The Serendipity Experience, which is the name of the coaching program that I run. And have a look at, you've heard something. Sometimes that's what happens. Sydney Banks, we were talking about him earlier, you and I, before we went live on air, but we'll give him a mention. Good old Sid.
Good old Sid, yeah.
Yeah, because you've got quite into
absolutely. I was watching the Hawaii lectures this week, actually, and what was that? There was something, somebody came up to him halfway through one of these lectures during the break and said, I've never heard you speak like that before. He said, I've never changed anything I've spoken about. I've said the same thing for 30 years, exactly the same thing, but you're just hearing it differently.
Yeah. And that is so true, So you could, people might hear that themselves, I don't know, in your own family, or if you've got children or a partner or work colleagues, that you've been telling them something, and then they go somewhere else and they come back and they're telling you because they've heard it somewhere else. What you're like, I've been saying that. They're like, have you? Oh, because it's not what we say, it's how people hear it.
It's
and
perception.
And that takes the kind of responsibility off from us trying to share a message. What I get to see is all I feel I'm doing is nudging people in the direction of truth, the truth of how their psychological system works. Now, when we're pointing people in the direction of truth, we don't have to point too hard. We just have to point. It's that way. That they'll find it in their own journey. But trying to get somebody to see something the way I'm seeing it shows me that I'm out of the logic, because it's not how it works. So, the more that we understand those kind of subjects, if you like, which is how, I like the way we break it down, actually, when we do the iHeart training for the children, because when we do that, we make it quite simple. But we talk about the superpower of the mind. We talk about the source of all our feelings. We talk about the nature of thought. We really get people to see that, as we think, we feel. So, it's one system. We talk about separate realities. And when we talk about those things and we break them down and explore them, they come together as well. And it's like, oh, wow, we are all living in our own world, in this sort of belief that we're all living in the same world, which we kind of are too. So there's this sort of thing going on. But creating our own reality of every situation. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, it's still, as I talking about it now, it blows my mind that we live in a world that does that and doesn't maybe really understand how we do that. Isn't that incredible? We know we can fly people to the moon and we can do all these things, yet it seems to me that most people do not understand how our mind truly works. So that's what we're here. That's what I'm doing here, is to, come to one of my workshops, or come and have a chat, or, come and do a program, or just watch some videos. That's sydbanks.com, SYDBANKS, sydbanks.com is a great website. And I think at the treatment centre where I worked, I introduced everybody to the Hawaiian lectures. I like the first one, Secret of the Mind, and all of those lectures. And for some people it resonated, and for some people it didn't. And it's fine, then you let it go. But you know what? If 10% of people that came through that treatment centre heard something and their lives improved, that's amazing for me, because it's not just one person's life that improves, it's all of their family's lives that have improved too. Because when people are caught up in habits and addictions, there has this knock-on effect that people are really concerned and worried about them because they know where it's leading. And you see, if that's your son or your daughter or your brother or your sister or your neighbour, you see a beautiful person that is caught up in some behaviour that just doesn't suit them. It doesn't suit any of us. And I think there's such an innocence for me behind addiction, because our brain is running the show, in the physical body. So it's the orders from the brain which change our chemicals in our body, changes our chemistry, and our biology runs from that. What we're pointing to is before the brain. We're pointing to what we would call, maybe the power of thought, or the principles behind the human experience. And that, that, if you like, instructs the brain. But if the brain doesn't believe it to be true, it sticks with what it knows. So the brain has been programmed. That's how it is. We've all been programmed in a way, because innocently we were told this is how it works. So we're like, all right then. And now we've got, people come along saying, well, what if that's not true? But seeing the innocence that we were also one of those people who saw it to be true. So it's not like, oh, I know this and you don't know this, but it's available to all of us. So we're here to spread that understanding.
BayRadio for Wednesday afternoon, here with Amanda O'Shea. Hiya.
Hello, Dougie.
So we're we're at the final furlong again. It's gone so quickly again.
It does go so quickly.
Yeah.
That's how it is. But it's nice, and I'm gonna record these, so that's good. So people can listen to them again if they did think there was anything interesting that they got from it. Mm-hmm. So so we've talked a little bit then about how easy it is to fall into habits. That's all of us. I was just, I see my own habits playing out. When we're doing the iHeart program, talking about this stuff with the children, we talk about our grown-up teddy bears in that way of, when we're little, we do often have a comfort, right? Something that's like a blanket or a teddy bear or something. And, most adults still don't have that teddy bear or that same blanket, right? That's not the norm. We find somewhere along the line they lost it, or they got rid of it, or they just didn't need it anymore, And but I don't know that we see that we have comforts that we kind of swap them for, or as we grow up, very easy for us to have a comfort. Like, I realise myself, I can get into habits so quickly. It's not that they're bad habits, it's just that I realise. So in the winter, I love that warmth and comfort, and I love a hot water bottle. I love an electric blanket. I love that cozy. Then there's nothing worse for me than getting up to bed and then going, oh no, I'd switched the electric blanket on, but I didn't put it on, or I didn't put it on properly, that whole... And I realise how quickly I can fall into my own habits of feeling like, I can't get into that bed if it's not, or I can't do this if it's not right. Or myself watching Netflix. I have to really be strict with myself because I can very easily then suddenly fall into, oh no, I need to watch one, and then I can't stop. So they're not things that are going to kill me.
Yeah.
But I notice how my own, sort of habits, I can fall very, very quickly into something. So it's such an interesting subject, habits. And I'm going to run a few workshops actually on habits and addictions, how habits can run into addictions very quickly and innocently. And that's when it can be quite dangerous because then we're not in a position to pull back so easily. It's like we lose our power over something like alcohol, for example. But yeah, it's an invitation for everybody to look at what could be your grown-up teddy bears. What are your comforts that you kind of might know? You might have an inkling that maybe you've slipped into some unhealthy habits, and it might just be worth reflecting on. Yeah. So of course you don't have any, Dougie, Mack.
I don't know. You mentioned that earlier, and I was just trying to think. Yeah, I'm definitely a sucker for Netflix. That's one of my, definitely, especially binge watching stuff.
Yeah.
If there's something that I think, oh, hang on. Yeah, no, I've got to watch the next one. And yeah, I have managed to go through a whole series in an evening sort of thing. It's a bit naughty, that.
Yeah, there's no time to reflect either. So we don't get the joy, in the old days, something would be on once a week and you chat about it to people at work next day, or what do you think it is? We just go back to back. So actually we don't get the full enjoyment of the suspense and our own imagination.
Do you remember the days when there was something on the telly and it was really, really good, but you had to wait a week?
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
You had to wait a week. Yeah.
And your own imagination would either come up with what it was or something similar. So our imagination now, we're so instant, aren't we? We're so instant. So it is nice we've got this great gift called the mind, which is full of imagination and wonder. And if we can hang out there a bit more, I think that we'd see that we are so creative as human beings. Somebody said, who are we? We are... there's a Jack Prensky quote. I might have said it on here a few weeks ago, but all we are, he says, is peace, love, and wisdom, with the power to create the illusion that we are not. And that wraps it up for me like that. We're amazing. We've got this amazing gift of thought that we get to bring alive. That's part of the system. That's how it works. And so understanding that just means we do not get our knickers in a twist as much. I used that the other day with an Arab client. Didn't really go down too well. He didn't know what knickers in. I was trying to explain what knickers in a twist was.
Yeah. Doesn't translate terribly well, I imagine. Yeah.
Anyway, I did my best. So forget that. We get ourselves all in a kerfuffle.
Yes, a kerfuffle. I must say my binge watching has turned to Sid Banks now.
Oh, so, yeah.
It's not so bad.
It feels like that, but it's the same, isn't it? If you think, what I love about Sydney Banks is he's pointing you back to, you've got everything you need inside of you. So, he's not some guru who's telling you anything that you don't already know.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what I love about him, that normal guy pointing us back. That's why I love this inside out understanding, because it's pointing us back to, we're all healthy underneath, our madness, underneath our habits.
Yep.
I'm thinking we're all healthy. We've all got mental well-being. We've all got innate resilience, and we've all got that natural ability to just create experience. So good, the bad, or the ugly. You get caught up in some habits and addictions, it's ugly. Yeah, it doesn't feel good, and then the human body is, the brain's in control, and we can go down all sorts. But I'll talk to anybody who wants to know more about that. Just call me. You can call me directly on 646 816 625. You can check out the interviews or conversations I've had with people on the YouTube channel Amanda O'Shea, or you can check out my website, The Serendipity Experience. And I'd love to hear from anybody, and I'd love to just have a connection chat. I'd love that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Lovely to have you along again.
Thank you.
And see you next week, same time.
Absolute pleasure. Same time next week. It's a date.